bringing you the future today. This is Resetting Tomorrow. Tales from the frontiers of science, engineering, technology, and telecom.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Resetting Tomorrow. I'm your host, Hugo Malan, and we've got a great show for you today. We're diving into the amazing world of sustainable innovation, focusing on Dow's Fort Saskatchewan Path to Zero expansion project. And we're joined by Don Cameron, the Alberta Operations Site Director and Vice President at Dow Canada. Don leads the operations at Dow's Fort Saskatchewan site in Alberta, where some truly transformative work is happening. Under his leadership, Dow is pioneering the Path to Zero expansion project, an ambitious and a groundbreaking effort to decarbonize their manufacturing facilities and deliver low-carbon products to customers. The Path to Zero initiative is on track to create the world's first net zero emissions integrated ethylene cracker and derivative site, targeting Scope 1 and 2 greenhouse gas emissions. This project not only aims for net zero emissions, but also sets a new benchmark for the entire industry, showing what's possible when innovation and sustainability come together. In our conversation, we'll explore the exciting advancements with Path to Zero, the importance of collaboration, and how finding the right expert talent is key to this project's success. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by the future of sustainable chemical manufacturing. Don, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Hugo. It's great to be here.
To start off with, can you give us a brief overview of your journey all the way from New Mexico to your current role in Alberta?
Yeah, sure, Hugo. It's been quite a journey. I actually grew up in southern New Mexico in the U.S. On a small farm, actually. So where most of my life was in a small town. I did university, got a chemical engineering degree, and started with Dow actually on the U.S. Gulf Coast in Freeport, Texas in 1990. So I've been with Dow for, almost 35 years now. So during that time, I was able to move around. Most of my career has really all been in manufacturing with Dow. So moved around different plants, different roles, projects, direct manufacturing, quality, Six Sigma. So really Dow's given me a chance to do all sorts of things, even support some overseas projects in Saudi Arabia and Thailand. Most recently I was down in East Texas for Dow. And then about 2.5 years ago, Dow gave me the opportunity to come up here, and where I'm the site director for our Alberta operations, which includes Fort Saskatchewan here, as well as our Prentice site. And I also have the vice president for Dow Canada role as well. Our headquarters are in Calgary, and my offices actually sit up here in Fort Saskatchewan, which are just outside of Edmonton. So,
well, that's quite a journey from the southern edge of the U.S. to the northern parts of Canada. What is
a little
it
bit
like?
different weather. A little bit different weather, Hugo.
I can imagine. Well, tell us a little bit about your role, more specifically there at Dow Canada, and what it's like to lead the operations up there.
Yeah, so the largest part of my role is the site director for the two large sites. We have about 550 Dow employees here in Alberta, as well as another 500 or 600 direct contractors that support us from our contract partners here on site. So my responsibility is really to assure that operations are running safely, efficiently, and meeting the business asks and the business demands. So I have the direct responsibility for the various facilities that we have. The leadership of each of those facilities reports to me. I also have a responsibility to make sure that we're integrating all the plants together to make sure they're working optimally. I would say the site support functions that we have, things like site logistics, accounting, environmental health and safety, human relations, although those are all also here on site and also part of our our Dow team that we have here. So from a day-to-day, month-to-month perspective, it's really all about safe, reliable operations to meet the business demand. And that's kind of the mantra, Hugo, keep it rolling.
Can you give folks just a sense of the scale of the operations? Yeah, I was lucky enough to visit with you earlier this year, and that's really what took my breath away, just the magnitude of what you all are working with there.
Sure. Yeah. So today we produce, we are one of Dow's largest polyethylene producing sites here in Dow's global portfolio, if you want to talk about it. So we've been operating here since 1961. So we have a long history here. But, really what we're embarked on now is essentially more than doubling the size of the site and doing this like in 6 years. So this project is, a $7 billion US plus third-party spending. And as part of that process, we're going to more than double the size, which includes more than doubling the production capacity for polyethylene. But as important is we're going to additionally take this entire site to net zero carbon emissions, which is a really, really ambitious goal. And so something that Dow has never done, and in fact, industry has never done before. But you're going to hear me refer to Jim Fitterling, our CEO, calls it the decarbonize and grow strategy. And we are kind of all in as a company, and we're really the first outpost on this journey that we're setting out on.
So we've heard about Path to Zero as a big initiative for Dow, and the zero emissions you just referred to is the zero in Path to Zero, right?
Correct. Yeah, actually, that's a great point. The project kind of the idea started a few years ago, 5, 6, maybe almost 8 years ago. And perhaps I should even step back. The polyethylene business is one that is growing, continues to grow. I think it's roughly 1.3 GDP, and we see that progressing in the future. So many of the applications that we make are super critical for where the world is going, right? So there's a lot of demand. So there was a drive, the business, technology, the company was looking for where's our next investment going to be. And there was really 2 major sites that were being discussed as the next option. One was in the Netherlands, in our Terneuzen site. And there was some regulatory drivers that were forcing us to look at what we could do to further reduce regulation or emissions there. But at the same time, we were also looking here in Canada, where we have a lot of advantages, and we can talk a little more about that, raw materials among them, but other things that make this an attractive place to grow. So the company set off really in a parallel path with projects in both places. So really at this point, that led to sort of this little package of 2 projects that was originally had their own names, but here about 3 years ago, we rebranded the whole program as Path to Zero. So you'll hear, if you're up here, you'll hear Path to Zero Fort Saskatchewan, because really the vision is that as we reach towards our 2050 goal of really being net zero as a company, there will be a number of Path to Zero projects that are coming right after this. So, but the zero specifically, as you highlighted, is really about greenhouse gases, and specifically carbon CO2 emissions.
Oh, it's remarkable when you can have a project like this that both satisfies a business need, but also moves us forward in terms of sustainability. Don, can you tell us a few of the major milestones you've hit already on this path?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And it's been hot and heavy. Hugo, we had probably the public announcement when we made the final investment decision last November of 2023. There had already been, of course, significant amount of preliminary engineering, purchase, equipment orders and things like that. But this has been a year where really activity accelerated. So it's been quite the year in 2024 already. We broke ground on the new ethylene cracker, which is one of the larger plants as part of the investment in April. What we called the first pile, which is always interesting, but essentially where you're going to drill the first holes and put the first foundational piles in place. So, and then meanwhile, the site preparation has continued throughout the year. I think we've moved something on the order of 2 million metric tons of dirt. And that's, this is a huge amount of dirt. There's 175,000 truckloads of dirt has been moved. We hit in June, we were really proud. Safety is one thing that Dow prides itself on, and that's both project and operations. We reached 500,000 work hours just from our project segment group on utilities planning and infrastructure, which is part of the program, really doing the site prep. And then we start to look ahead, and already this year is going to have even more milestones in the next 4 months. So it's going to start coming, hot and heavy. We've started to do steel work in one of our existing plants. It's going to be retrofitted at what we call our original cracker. Down in our Prentice site, which we call LP7, it's a gas phase polyethylene plant. We're going to start piling and construction there. And one of the more visible, although maybe perhaps not a large spend on the overall, is our large maintenance warehouse. It will be completed at the end of this year. So it's a super prominent structure that sits right on the highway, and the community can see it. And really, that's been one of the more visible things that you would see if you visited the site right now.
What has the interaction with the local community been like? I mean, you're creating a lot of jobs, aren't you?
Oh, right. Yeah. So it's interesting because the community here, Fort Saskatchewan, where I'd say the majority of the Path to Zero, not all of it, since we also down in the Red Deer Prentice area, about 2 hours south of the Edmonton area, also have project work. But we've been here since 1961. So we have 63 years of operating experience with the community, and the community is very, very supportive. We have many folks that work here at the site that live in the community. We depend on the community for services in some cases. And so we have a very close relationship, and they are very excited. Obviously, the growth in jobs is exciting, right? It brings investment, which is good for the community, the economy. It brings support for the community in other ways that, is really important as Fort Saskatchewan attempts to grow. And I think they're also just very excited to be part of a world first, right? This game-changing investment that we're making to be really the first petrochemical plant in the world, or facility in the world, that's doing a direct net zero investment. So the community is pretty much all in, I guess I could say.
There's always a knock-on effect. Once you demonstrate that it can be done, others will follow. But being the trailblazer is not always so easy. What are some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, certainly, yeah. You can imagine, or anybody who's been involved in a project can imagine that there's a number of challenges that we faced. I'd say one of the largest ones is, and I wouldn't call it an overcomable challenge, but it's been an ongoing challenge, is that we are continuing to run one of Dow's most profitable sites in the middle of this kickoff of investment, right? So one of the things that we committed very early on is to really work as one team with the program, what we call a program, this overall program team, to make sure that we're all successful, right? We can't, it's critical that we keep on producing, to help generate the cash that's needed to do this investment. So, but this has created, I would say, from daily to even larger challenges with, okay, well, we really need this space on the site for the program, but that's a critical space that's being used for some other purpose for daily operations. So how do we work together to really make win-wins and success here, so that it works for both sides of the, this venture that we've embarked on? That's probably been the largest challenge that I would say we've run up against. Obviously, there's other technical challenges as we've gotten into this. We discover things that were not fully understood, and we've had to move through. But we have some amazing technical people that can help us solve problems. And so far, I think really working together as one team, it's been amazing to see what we've been able to accomplish so far.
It sounds like collaboration was a central concept that you had to really focus on across functions and even across stakeholders. Can you say a little bit more about the role that played in the success so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I highlight that anything of this scale, and I, I would even take it beyond this scale, because I think to be successful in any venture or business, collaboration really is critical. This is a little bit of a unique project for Dow versus past Dow larger projects, because we are partnering with a larger number of third parties than we have in the past, right? So this includes some very key partners here as we're in the construction phase, companies like Fluor, Pembina, Wolf Midstream, Linde. These are some very large companies that we are really tight with and will be critical for us to be successful here. They're going to be part of the construction, and they're providing key interfaces for us. And so the early collaboration with these partners has really been amazing to see, actually, and I think has been set us up for what I think is going to be a great success. These companies, they've been able to bring learnings that they have as well as what we're trying to achieve, and I think really bring a spirit of win-win for everybody. And that collaboration bleeds all the way down, whether, as I mentioned earlier, the challenges of coordinating between, say, the program, direction, construction, and our operations. They have to collaborate almost on a daily basis sometimes about how we're going to deal with certain things. The community, collaborating with the community. We're really keeping communication flowing very well with the local communities here. Things like traffic. It seems like a very mundane thing, right? But we're going to peak at somewhere over 5,000 to 6,000 construction workers a day here. And that's not going to be just for a few weeks. That's going to be for several years where we're going to be at that levels. That's a lot of load on the community. And so collaborating with the community to help them sort of understand what's coming. A lot of times communication solves a lot of problems. If people just know it's happening and can be involved in that, it solves so many of the problems. But yeah, we could probably go on for an hour with all the ways that collaboration is helping us solve problems.
What advice would you have for other companies that want to follow in your footsteps with similar scale projects, particularly with a sustainability goal as well?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think, thinking about this a little bit, I think one of the first things that I would tell somebody who is in my shoes dealing with this same thing is, I think it's so critical that there's good alignment from the board level and senior corporate leadership on down for the vision of what we're embarking on and what we're trying to do. I think when you introduce a very ambitious world-leading sustainability goal into a large business project like that, it brings a lot of decision points, a lot of potential conflicts, and already just in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of decision points, things like scope, and if the vision is not really crystal clear from the board and the senior leadership all the way down, it can really lead to being easy to question. Okay, well, we're spending this extra money, or we have this schedule impact, and it's really supporting a sustainability, part of the sustainability goals of the project. But as you know, anytime large investment is occurring, the economy, certainly we know what kind of dynamic world we're in today, that the project goes through pressure points. And if you don't have that clear alignment from the top down, then it's going to create cracks that are going to put a lot of problems when you start to move a project like this forward. So that's what I would tell anybody is, you just got to have that passionate leadership all the way from the top, or you're going to have trouble with really moving these kind of coexisting goals together forward.
From your seat here at the Vanguard, can you look to the future for us and tell us how you see the future of carbon neutral chemical manufacturing evolving, and then what role you expect Dow to play in that future?
Yeah, certainly. And I have no crystal ball, right? But I would say that as I see what we're doing, there's some really cool technologies we're putting in, but we're not necessarily, the technologies are innovative, but they're not something which is from 30 years in the future, right? They're things that we know how to do. We're able to put it together. And I believe that as we go into the future, this blueprint that I think we're putting together for ourselves in Dow is also going to be a blueprint for industry forward, right? I think it's going to show that it is possible to grow as well as decarbonize and meet goals. And in fact, it's interesting as we've interfaced, we talked a lot about community stakeholders, but, some of our other major stakeholders are people like the government, the provincial government here in Canada, Alberta government, and as well as the Canadian federal government. And one thing that's been fascinating to me is to see the government support of this project because of these outcomes that we're looking to get. And what it's allowed people, no matter which side of the aisle you might be on or whatever political leanings, it's one that allows people to see, no, it is possible to make major impacts on our impact on the environment while also growing jobs, while also, growing our economy. And so I just say that to say, as we go forward, I think more industry is going to be put under pressure to do this. And in fact, I personally believe that in the future, something like this is going to almost become sort of the ticket to play in the game. Maybe not next year, but I think as you go 5-10 years forward, you're not going to you're not going to expand or build a complex like what we're doing anywhere in the world unless it has an aspect as well of reducing emissions. And I think Dow, if we meet our goals here, we're going to show that it can be done. And I think it's going to create a competitive environment where it's very difficult for somebody to build and compete if they're not working on a similar path, right? So I think that's part of the future. The other part of the future is our customers are demanding this. I mean, they've, as you probably know, you can see in the news, I mean, many companies are putting these goals out to be carbon neutral by 2050, right? Well, how do you do that, right? If you're a company like Procter & Gamble or Coca-Cola or any of these industrial companies, how do you do that if you don't have a partner who is coming to the table with product like this? So I think it's going to be more and more demand for these kinds of products. And I see that building speed and a wheel that's going to build to the point where whether it's our government stakeholders, as I was talking about earlier, or our downstream customers, there's really not going to be room, or there'll be less and less room for products that don't align with these principles of sustainability that we're building into this project.
Well, that's a very positive vision for the future. It's been such a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. But before I let you go, I do have a few quick final questions to ask you, rapid fire style, if you're ready.
Okay. I'll give it a shot.
What is a new innovation or up-and-coming company that you've come across that you think could really change the future?
Well, I think one thing that's super exciting to me, and I'm again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a longtime manufacturing guy, but I think that one of the most exciting innovations that I see coming is small modular nuclear reactors. I feel like that this is a technology that obviously nuclear has different people have different views on it, but these new technologies are amazing, Hugo, and I don't know how familiar you are with them, but these are much, much safer than past technologies. They're much smaller, which means they're also usable in more places. And more importantly, they have the ability to generate both steam and electricity. So for a facility like ours in particular, it allows you to truly replace these large natural gas-driven turbine facilities. And, we talked a little bit earlier about how we're going to decarbonize. And you think about the fact that what we're really doing is replacing carbon that we're burning, which generates CO2, with hydrogen. That's sort of the underlying thing. When you talk nuclear, you're actually able to get that electricity and that steam without any sort of combustion at all. So it's really exciting from an industrial perspective. But I would say on a broader society perspective, it really excites me because I think that this would be a huge step towards a true emissions-free future. So Dow's actually got a pilot going in the US. There's a company called X Energy that is partnering with us down in our Seadrift, Texas facility we announced. And in fact, the Department of Energy in the US is very supportive of this financially. And We're in the process of engineering to put a major installation there in as partnering with X Energy there. And what this is going to then do is allow us to truly move towards using renewables, because the small modular nuclear can help baseload energy needs when, for example, solar or wind or even tidal is not working as regularly, but which then really allows you to unlock the value of those renewable energies. So I think future-wise, this is going to be a game changer.
That is exciting. How many years is it away before we see it?
Well, I would say that in not just X Energy, there's several companies that are doing this, including some installations that are going in Wyoming right now. The U.S. I think is a bit of a leader on the small modular nuclear reactors. Our project in Seadrift should be coming in the mid 2030s, say 2033 through 2035. So it's actually being actively engineered as we speak. So this is not something that's a 20, 30 years out thing. This is something that has been demonstrated at pilot scale already and now is in the scale-up scale to apply it. So this is something that's I'd say in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to be starting to see this more and more coming out and being applied in different places.
Very exciting. On a more personal level, when you face setbacks and challenges, how do you keep going and push through?
Well, challenges, I don't know. I've always been somebody that sees challenges as opportunities. My personal passion is, I've always loved being in manufacturing plants. In fact, my wife used to laugh at me because we would slow down on a highway whenever we'd be passing a manufacturing, a chemical plant or a power plant, and I would always want to take a look at it. But it's very satisfying for me to be part of a team solving problems together. So when I see a challenge, whether it's in a manufacturing plant, something I've always loved to tackle, or even in a broader sense as an organization, I think it's an opportunity. So it gets me excited. In fact, sometimes even more motivated, because I can see it as a way that our team is going to be able to find a way to do something better and cheaper, right? Sometimes when there's no challenge, you don't stretch yourself to find a better way to do it. And I think although it can be stressful in a moment, that's what keeps me motivated is, hey, this is an opportunity to really do it better, right? This is forcing us to figure out how to do it better. And I've seen that over and over again in my career. Being in a manufacturing environment, you get lots of those kind of opportunities, but I think they exist everywhere, right? Business, even in personal situations. But that's what really motivates me and keeps me going.
And how about after hours? How do you unwind and ultimately make sure you come back at your best the next day?
Yeah, that's something that I don't know that I've always been so aware of how that impacts me. But in particular, I like to run. So I wouldn't consider myself, I'm not a marathon runner necessarily, but I love to run regularly. There's nothing better than getting out and just getting on the road, putting a podcast in and just going and letting your body sort of work its stresses out, right? And then that also turns into all sorts of other things. I think it's so important to take full advantage of everything that life offers. That's one of I'd say the opportunity to come up here and work in Alberta over the last 3 years has been exciting because it offers you the opportunity to go do things like get out and go skiing, take advantage of the mountains. I love to hike. So my wife and I will frequently go to the mountains, which are just several hours away from Edmonton here, and hike. And I think by doing that, you bring more balance to your life, and that's allowed me to keep my stress levels where they need to be. And when I do come in, I'm a lot more focused, right? So trying to be a little bit more intentional about making sure that my running or getting good sleep, taking advantage of those things I enjoy, like hiking and skiing. When I do those things, I find that I'm a lot more effective and operating where I want to operate at when I'm here at the facility or working.
I think you're fortunate that you have some spectacular natural opportunities around you for that kind of activity. And now I
Yeah.
come to a very important question for an engineer. Would you rather have Batman's gadgets or Iron Man's suit?
What a hard question, Hugo. They both have their allure for me. And as you said, for an engineer, right? I think, though, I have to lean towards Batman's gadgets versus Iron Man's suit because I love gadgets. I love the flexibility and even in my personal life, just technology and things that can make life easier. I mean, I just always find that fascinating, right? And at work. And I think the thing that sways me over the gate towards the gadgets versus the suit is that, there's always a new gadget to play with, right? So even what you have today, as cool as it is and as innovative as it is, there's always something new that's coming that's going to be even better, right? So, and yeah, Iron Man's suit evolves. Certainly he has evolutions, but it's very, moving forward, whereas there's always something new that's happening there. So I think I'd have to go with Batman's gadgets versus the suit.
That's a well-motivated answer. Well, Don, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it very much. Good conversation. Lots of exciting things happening here, and looking forward to maybe seeing you again up here sometime.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the end of another episode of Resetting Tomorrow. A huge thank you to Don Cameron for joining us today and sharing the incredible work happening at Dow's Fort Saskatchewan site with a Path to Zero expansion project. His insights into the future of sustainable chemical manufacturing have been truly enlightening. To our amazing listeners, thank you for tuning in and supporting the show. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us bring you more engaging and informative content. And remember, if you're looking for expert talent or are an expert yourself seeking new opportunities, head over to resettingtomorrow.com. Whether you're pushing the boundaries of innovation or exploring new career paths, we're here to help. And with that, this is Hugo Malan signing off. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep resetting tomorrow. See you next time.
This podcast was produced in partnership with Amaze Media Lab.